This is part 1 of my video course True SMC from A to Z, Valid Pullback Identification, and never to miss learning part if looking forward to master True SMC. So without further ado, let's dive in. Considering these 6 scenarios, let's identify the valid pullback and the invalid pullback. Alright, starting with scenario 1 right here, we can clearly see that it is a bullish scenario. To validate a pullback in a bullish scenario, we need to see a break past the previous candle low, either by a wick or a candle close. It doesn't matter. Alright, so in scenario 1 right here, we can clearly see that price break past the highest point, and coming up into this next candle, price break below the low right here with a body closure. So this confirms to be a valid pullback, as price ended up also closing past the high again. So this confirms to be a valid pullback because price break below the previous candle low. Alright, so scenario 1 is a valid pullback. Alright, into scenario 2, same here, we can clearly see that price break past the highest point of that candle, and then coming up to the next candle, we can clearly see also price break past the highest point. If we check the lowest point right here, the lowest point of the candle, we can clearly see that the lowest point is still protected, meaning it's yet to be broken. So this then invalidates this scenario 2 to be a valid pullback, because we need a break below the previous candle low to confirm or to validate a pullback in a bullish scenario. Just like scenario 1, we can clearly see a break below the low, and I said the break can be by a wick or a candle close. It doesn't matter. In scenario 2, there was no break below the low, so this invalidates scenario 2 as a valid pullback. Alright, coming up to scenario 3, right here, we can clearly see that this bullish candle and this bearish candle all have the same high. Like the highs of this candle, like the highest point of these two candles is all the same. So in this scenario, will we pick the lowest point of this bullish candle, or will we pick the lowest point of this bearish candle? In this scenario, we will pick the second candle. As long as the highs are equal, we will pick the second candle, and obviously the rule still stands to be the same. If there is a break below the lowest point of the previous candle, either by a wick or a candle close, this validates a pullback in a bullish scenario. So if I mark the lowest point of this candle, you can clearly see that this bullish candle wicked below the lowest point and eventually breaking past this high. So this confirms this one here to be a valid pullback. So scenario 3 is a valid pullback. Alright, let's go on to scenario 4. Scenario 4 also is a bullish scenario, meaning the same rule applies. We need a break below the previous candle low. Alright, so right here, the high is broken and the low of this candle is protected. Coming up into this next candle, you can see the high is broken and also the low right here. So obviously the low here is broken before price ended up making this high right here. You can clearly see that the low of this candle was broken before price ended up breaking past the high. So this validates this scenario 4 as a valid pullback, because we said to validate a pullback in a bullish scenario, we need a break past the lowest point of the previous candle, either by a wick or a candle close. And we can clearly see that this bullish candle wicked below the lowest point of the previous candle before breaking past this high. So this validates this one here to be a valid pullback. And by the way, a nice thing to note that the color of this candle does not matter. You can clearly see that the candle that wicked or the candle that break below the lowest point of the previous candle is a bullish candle. So meaning, or it's literally the same color like with the previous candle. So meaning the color does not matter, or in that case, whether the candle is bullish or whether the candle is bearish, it does not matter. So scenario 4 is indeed a valid pullback. Right, let's go on to scenario 5. Right here, we can clearly see that scenario 5 is a bearish scenario. To validate a pullback in a bearish scenario, we need a break past the highest point of the previous candle. This is literally the opposite of the bullish scenario. So right here, this one here is the highest point, and this one here is the lowest point. So you can clearly see price is breaking through the lowest point. Yeah, right here, the lowest point. And to validate a pullback, we need a break past the highest point. So right here, this is the highest point, and you can clearly see that this highest point is still protected, and price ended up breaking past the low. So meaning this here is not a valid pullback. But what if this, like this candle, wicked above this highest point? In this case, then this one here will be a valid pullback. But since there was no such, like since price didn't wick above or didn't break above the previous candle highest point, this invalidates scenario 5 as valid. Right, and coming up to the last scenario, which is still a bearish scenario, meaning to validate that pullback we'll need a break past the highest point of the previous candle. All right, we can clearly see price break below the lowest point, and also right here, but before breaking below the lowest point, price break past the highest point right there. So this confirms scenario 6 to be valid if price ended up breaking again past the low right here, and we can clearly see price break below the low after breaking past the high. So this validates scenario 6 as valid. All right, so right now here, so scenario 1 is valid because of the break below the lowest point of the previous candle, since this is a bullish scenario. Scenario 2 is invalid because there is no any break below the lowest point, and this is a bullish scenario. And we said in a bullish scenario, we need a break below the lowest point. Scenario 3, this is a bullish scenario, so we need a break below the lowest point. It can be a break by a wick or a break by a candle close. Actually, it doesn't matter. In this scenario, I said if the highs are equal, then we will pick the second candle. Once the second candle lowest point is breaked, like either by a wick or a candle close, and then another break by a like, and then the high is broken, then that's a confirmed valid break of structure. In scenario 4, like I said, the candle breaking past the lowest point, or if it was in a bearish scenario, the candle breaking past the highest point, it doesn't matter if it's bullish or bearish, meaning the color of the candle does not matter. As long as the principles are met, then that pullback is considered valid. Scenario 5, of course, is a bearish scenario. We need a break past the highest point of this previous candle, and we can clearly see that all these candles we are breaking past the lowest point and not the highest point, meaning there was no any valid pullback in scenario 5. And then in scenario 6, which is the final scenario, right here we can clearly see a break below the low and then a break past the high before the break before the low, meaning now this here is a valid pullback, because in a bearish scenario we need a break past the highest point of the previous candle before continuing with its prevailing trend.